It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders on a feel-good Friday. Right, Alan? You feeling good?
No.
Oh, well, there's that. Why aren't you feeling good? What's going on?
I'm tired, boss. It's been a long week.
Is this the last? Is this the last day?
I'll drive back tomorrow, yeah.
Okay. All right. And is DB already headed out?
DB's already headed out. Yes. So tomorrow we'll interview the offensive lineman, and then we'll be out of here.
Okay. All right. And that's early in the morning, or what's the?
Yeah. Over by like 11.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. Well, I've enjoyed. Dang it. You know what that means? We might have to get in some morning rushes where you're just walking around back at home anyway. I've enjoyed, and then today a little bit different, walking around in the convention center. I definitely enjoyed that as well, but I know the people have really enjoyed that, so we got to find some way for you to still incorporate those every now and then.
All right, we'll do it.
But anyways, obviously going to talk about some stuff from there. But Alan, the quarterback position rearing its head yet again, as it's going to continue, I would imagine, until we get this thing solved. Matthew Stafford going to be back with the Rams. Never really felt like Pittsburgh was going to be a landing spot. Of course, they're going to be mentioned because they don't have a quarterback, but everybody had kind of talked about like Rams, kind of the Raiders as well within that, obviously, maybe a little bit the Giants, but it was really the Rams and potentially the Raiders if he was going to go elsewhere. Now he's going to be back with the Rams, new contract. Obviously, they said like the Raiders and Giants may be offering a bit more money, but obviously the best situation possible for him just staying in LA with the Rams from, obviously the living perspective with his family, but also the football environment as well that he has there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm pretty sure I said this multiple times in this podcast. This was always a contract negotiation. This was always going to be the end result. I can't believe that things got to where they did with Tom Brady allegedly tampering with him and on a ski trip in Montana. And I don't know, smart people got fooled. This was very clearly the end result that was always overwhelmingly most likely. Be very interested to see what the number is. I saw like a rap sheet report that they're not going to announce the total until after the start of free agency, which tells me it's not very high. That's what I'm thinking.
He said he briefly popped in on the Pat McAfee show and said he thinks it's going to be like the same number that he played on last year,
which was like 29 million or 30 million or something like that.
Or not. Okay, maybe a little bit more than that, but closer to that than the 50, because he said, maybe the Raiders were more like 45 to 50, maybe the Giants as well. But like that, so that's the other part of it. I was going to be like, what number do you think somebody else would have had to have been?
Oh, okay, I understand. He was at 36 last year.
Okay, all right, yeah. So that would be So that's where he's talking. But what was there any possible? Like, could there have been a number that would have enticed him to leave the Rams, and what would that number have been? Like, that's my question.
I don't know, because the Rams weren't going to trade him, so it didn't matter. Like, if it got to the number, they were just going to have to pay it, but they didn't want to, and they didn't think anyone would. So they sent him out into the world and said, "Go see if you can get more from someone, and we'll reconvene." And they did, and they signed him. And that's what was always going to happen, because Sean McVay doesn't want another quarterback. And he's the kind of head coach that you give what he wants. So I don't know if there was a number that would have enticed Matt Stafford, but there was not that number combined with an offer that was going to entice the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah. That's a good point for sure. It's interesting because this is like they just went through, like, it seemed kind of contentious last year. So like 2 seasons out of the 4 that you've had Matthew Stafford there, like it just seems like we've gotten to like a weird point for whatever reason with his contract. And is it just because of age? Is it just because of like what he was looking for financially? I don't know, but it's like still, like we've said, a top 7-ish quarterback that you would just think like it doesn't even need to get to this point.
I mean, okay, so they want to drive a hard bargain, and I think they're right to. Like, I think $50 million for Matt Stafford's ridiculous, and I wouldn't pay it. And so I fully understand the thought process of the Rams here.
Yeah. I mean, for 50 million. But again, like, so if it's closer to like 36 or whatever, like he was playing on last year, that's going to be very interesting to see. why is that? Is that the reason that they wouldn't put it out until free agency start? Like, I'm just wondering what the reason is for that.
Yeah, because they don't want they don't want to set the market. So they don't want to hurt other quarterbacks with him signing for what he is. That's a thing that the player can get as a concession. It's like, well, I'll give you a deal, but let's keep it quiet so that this doesn't reset the market. The NFLPA puts a ton of pressure on players to not take team-friendly deals for that very reason, because, let's say Najee Harris in his heart of hearts just really wants to play for the Steelers and nowhere else. And the Steelers are like, we'll offer you an insultingly low contract offer to return. And Najee's like, yes, I'll take it. Well, then when Aaron Jones goes to the market, teams are going to be like, Najee Harris signs 6. You're getting 7 at the most, right? And so there's a reason that players, when they sign for well below market value, try not to let it get out, or try to, in this case, delay until after a bunch of the other contracts have been given out before, that way the market will be established and it'll be clear that this was a below market deal.
Right. And everybody said this would be the first domino to fall. So let's talk about what the fallout of that could be. A lot of people saying, could Aaron Rodgers make sense for the Rams if Matthew Stafford were to have gone elsewhere? You hear about the Giants now with Aaron Rodgers potentially, but Russell Wilson's name thrown in there. Also, Russell Wilson's name mentioned in Vegas, going back with Pete Carroll and reuniting there. Justin Fields been mentioned for the Jets. I kind of snuck that in yesterday. Not a lot of people caught it, but I threw that out there as where I think that his landing spot would be if it's not going to be in Pittsburgh. So the fallout of this for the Steelers, we expected Matthew Stafford back to the Rams, so maybe nothing has changed from your perspective, but that's kind of where I wanted to go is, okay, we've seen that domino fall now, so where do things go from here?
Yeah, I think the Giants are probably the team that feels like they're the most aggressive in trying to get their situation straightened out next. It seems like they're circling around Aaron Rodgers. It seems like there's mutual interest between them and Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's probably where this is headed next. And that just feels like the next shoe to drop for me.
Okay. So if that's the case, that would mean Giants not going to go the Russell Wilson route. The Giants still could draft a quarterback, obviously, but that's their vet in that room. Talked about the Raiders as well. It seems like, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, they mentioned there as well, I should say, in that same tweet. Sam Darnold as well. And then you get the Jets, who are also lurking, and Justin Fields has been mentioned there. We say we like when people put us on the spot. So, Alan, I'm going to put you on the spot. With those names mentioned, those landing spots that are still out there, how do you think it's going to play out?
Well, that's a good question. So I think after Rodgers to the Giants, things start to get hairy for the Steelers, because I think at that point, Fields to the Jets and Wilson to the Raiders would seem like very possible. You also have Sam Darnold out there playing musical chairs here without a spot. I don't think Pittsburgh would be that interested in him.
The one I like is I like Tennessee for him, because I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback at 1. I think that can make sense for that to be the route they go.
That's weird. I haven't heard anything about them being. It seems the Browns are going to draft a quarterback. That's the other quarterback needy team out there. But all the reporting from Mary Kay I've seen out of Cleveland is that they're looking at the draft. Whether that's the first round or the second round, I'm not sure yet. But they're looking at the draft. So Tennessee's the one team out there that's been really quiet. Is that going to be Shedeur Sanders? Is that going to be Cam Ward? Is that going to be a free agent? Is that going to be a trade down so that somebody else comes up and gets a quarterback? I don't know. It's interesting. But I could totally see, just like you're talking about the Giants wanting Aaron Rodgers with a younger quarterback, I could see the Raiders wanting Russell Wilson to put with Shedeur Sanders at 6. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And then I start thinking about man, how does this play out for the Steelers? If it's not Justin Fields, it's not Russell Wilson, because it's I said this before on here. I think that's I don't know about the most likely scenario, but it's a scenario that I could see, but then I just have no clue what happens from there. And if also Aaron Rodgers out of the equation in this as well, where in the world do the Steelers pivot to?
I'll say this. I don't think this is very likely, because I think if at any point between now and the start of free agency, the Steelers offer Russell Wilson a contract and say, we will sign you, he will sign it. Done. he'll be back if they want him. So I would be pretty skeptical that is going to happen. Now, Justin Fields, I'm not so sure. Like Russell Wilson at this point in his career is not primarily being motivated by financials. He's made a boatload of money. His wife also makes a boatload of money. He wants to keep playing. He wants a good position. And I think that matters more to him than the money. Justin Fields has never been a free agent. Didn't get the option picked up on his rookie contract. He's made some money, but it's not like he's, is not Russ. And so I think for him, this is his first opportunity to maximize his value. We talked yesterday. I would not be surprised at all if Justin Fields very strongly wants to get to the market to see what's out there. The Jets is a possibility. Yes, I agree. I actually wrote that in a story today that's very possible outcome. But I think if it's getting to the point where we are closing in on the days before free agency and the Steelers have not been able to work out something with Justin Fields, and I still think Justin Fields is their preference. Yeah. But if they get there, I think they will just simply sign Russell Wilson. I don't see a scenario where the Steelers lose out on both of these guys. If they do, or maybe if, something weird happens, I think Daniel Jones is probably the next guy that I would look at as like a realistic option.
Yeah, I actually sent that in a group message today. It was literally just a picture of Daniel Jones and just said he's loading. Because I think if that's the scenario, if that plays out how we just said, Justin Fields going to the Jets, Russell Wilson going to the Raiders, that's the name that I come up with next. Like I don't know who else would even be the next guy. Like if it isn't. So I don't know. I saw somebody put this out there. We never really thought, like you said, that Matthew Stafford would actually be traded. Like this was a negotiation thing for the Rams and Matthew Stafford. But another name that was thrown out there, they feel like actually could be because of the guaranteed money, Geno Smith. Do you think that's realistic at all? And why didn't we hear much of that if it is at the combine?
So I think the Steelers would be very interested in Geno Smith if he became available. It seemed like Mike McDonald, when he talked here at the combine, really kind of tried as hard as he could to put that to bed and said, he's our quarterback. I don't know why it's a conversation. Like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Now, look, people lie. Things change, whatever. But I think the Steelers would be very interested in Geno Smith. I don't know if he really is available or
well, the question would be like, where do they pivot to?
What the Seahawks would want. Right. Yeah. Like, where are they going? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I thought that was interesting because I guess I didn't realize how much money he was. I don't know if it's like right at the beginning of the league year or they need to get out of that deal. Because that's the thing. Like, if they were going to trade him, you think like that talk would have heated up by now, I feel like.
Yeah, and it has not. In fact, it's I've kind of been keeping him in the back of my mind as like a sleeper option. He has a $10 million roster bonus on the 16th, so just after the start of the new league year. But like, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Well, the reason that we're there, maybe there's a guy in the draft, and again, it's hard for me to fathom. The Steelers would not start a rookie quarterback, but they are keeping their eyes on some guys in the draft. We had the information yesterday, but didn't get to it about the meeting with Quinn Ewers, the Texas quarterback. Throw Jackson's Dart's name in there as well. Was there any other quarterbacks that I missed today say that they met formally with the Steelers?
No, I think that was it.
Okay. So, we've talked a little bit about Jaxson Dart on here. We haven't talked much, if at all, about Quinn Ewers. What do you make of him as a prospect? And like, where is kind of maybe the sweet spot, if you will, where you would be okay with that dart throw?
Quinn Ewers is interesting because a really high pedigree guy, was like a 5-star player coming out of high school. I might have been the number 1 player in the country, actually, coming out of high school, committed to Ohio State, ended up transferring to Texas. And there's been some reporting that he was like banged up this year. He didn't play that well. Had an opportunity in this really weak quarterback class to establish himself as the best option out there. And by the end of it, I was a little surprised he came out in the draft. I thought he probably needed to go back and do some more work because, right now being mocked in the 3rd round, just not a very good performance.
Especially, there was like reports that there were schools willing to pay him $6 million, whether that was smoke or not, like in the transfer portal. Because I assume it would have been the transfer portal for him, and he would have played elsewhere.
You can literally see on the tape the Texas wide receivers' frustration with their own quarterback, like coming out in games. And it's certain and then of course Texas, they want to pivot to Arch Manning. They don't have any interest in coming back. So it certainly wouldn't have been there if he went back to school. But he did reveal today that he had multiple injuries throughout the 2024 season, that he had an oblique injury, and then he had an ankle sprain. And so, it's I don't know. I guess it's worth a conversation, right? Because you try to gauge the severity of the injuries. You look at the pedigree of the player and you say, was 2024 this blip, this fluke, where if he's healthy, he'll be, back to the guy that his potential suggests he could be? I think he's an interesting prospect. To me, where he's being mocked because of the lack of other quarterback options, to me, this is a player that looks like he should be a late day 3 pick. And if you go to mock draft database right now, 88 for Quinn Ewers. I'm not taking Quinn Ewers with a 3rd round pick or anywhere friggin' near it. I just don't. I'm not interested in that at all.
What I did find interesting about the Quinn Ewers conversation today, and I wanted to get your opinion on, maybe information if you have it, was he talked about the Steelers being one of 2 teams that really didn't put him on the whiteboard. They were more interested in him as just like a person, wanted to get him to know his personality more so than the player. Is that kind of how they always do business, specifically with quarterback? They're more interested in the person than the player, or what can you tell me about that?
When they were very specifically quarterback hunting, I know they put guys on the whiteboard and they brought their whole offensive coaching staff into those meetings to kind of test them and do that kind of stuff. I don't get the sense that they were in that mode in this year's draft class.
That's fair. Okay. So, kind of let's bring that other name in there now, Jaxson Dart as well, who we've talked about. I would think if they were going to take him, it'd probably be even earlier than Quinn Ewers potentially.
Jaxson Dart currently on mock draft database 38.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and to be honest with you, I don't know that there's that much separation for me between the 2 players in terms of where I'd feel.
I would rather have Ewers. At least you can blame him not being very good on maybe being injured.
Yeah. So
Dart, he just isn't very good. Also, he's very old. Will Howard I talked to him today.
I like Will Howard.
Man, the thing about Will Howard is if you could get the guy that played in the last 4 games and you would be sure that that's the guy you were getting, being mocked at 86 right now, 3rd round pick. Yeah, for the guy over the last 4 games, yeah. But you look at the early Ohio State stuff, it's not very impressive. You look at the Kansas State stuff, it's kind of down. Actually, not that this is a college football podcast, but what a ballsy move by Ryan Day, because I watched some of the Will Howard Kansas State tape and I'm like, this looks worse than Cal McCord.
The guy they went got. Yeah,
it seems like he took a real chance at making a downgrade there, and it worked out for him, obviously. But
you mentioned Ryan Chip Kelly's the guy that wanted Will Howard there as well. So but I fully agree. I think that the arrow's pointing up for him, and there's just something about him in terms of, and I know maybe the intangible stuff gets hyped up too much, but I
don't think with quarterback you can hype up intangible stuff enough.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. But the way that he carries himself very much says leader of a franchise type.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he has that part of it. It's just that his mechanics are ugly and the ball doesn't get to where it needs to go way too often in the early tape. The last 4 games, like I said, were great. And I know there was some talk out of the Ohio State beat about there being some kind of footwork adjustment that they made with him.
Yeah.
I'm always kind of skeptical of those stories. A lot of the time that's
not that it was early too, but he got hurt against Penn State and just kept playing through it. I don't know if that would have impacted it, if it would have if he would have admitted that and sat a little bit as opposed to trying to, because that was arguably the worst that he looked was after he took that hit and played through the rest of that game injured. But yeah, I don't know. I go back to what I talked about at the quarterback position in this draft when we did our ideal mock thing. I think if the value lines up, no issue with a quarterback selection in this draft. I just don't think it's something that they have to force.
Yeah, and I think the value, like looking at where people are being mocked, Dylan Gabriel at 120.
Ooh,
I'm just like,
wow.
no,
Mm-hmm.
no.
I
No,
did like his
Riley,
answer of he's not for everybody. He's definitely
he's not
correct
for
on
me, that's for sure.
he's definitely correct on that. I appreciate the answer. Yeah,
uh
you can drop both of us in that bucket.
here's where I like the value of quarterback. Max
Mhm.
Brosmer and Seth Hennigan and Brady Cook in the 7th round or as undrafted free agents. And
Yeah.
you can maybe talk me into Curtis Rourke in like the 6th round.
Yeah. Another guy that
Al McCord actually, I think, kind of has some decent value. He's being mocked at 133 right now. The idea that anyone would prefer Dylan Gabriel to Kyle McCord, I don't even know what we're doing here.
It's really a shame, and I'm gonna blame Derek Bell for this, that we've seen Tyler Shuck jump up. He's almost top 100 now, right? Like that's pretty crazy.
He has gone from slightly underrated to dramatically overrated very quickly.
Yeah. Is he like 100 or somewhere within that
101.
range?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was
Mr. 101.
on January 19th, 668 on the NFL mock draft database board and is now 101.
Wow. That's unreal.
Yeah.
And again, a part of that is just how weak the draft class is at that position. You're gonna see guys get propped up that shouldn't be, but like just in general, like the stuff that happens this time of year is
He
crazy.
wasn't even good at the Senior Bowl. Like here's what he was. He was just as bad as Jaxson Dart and Dylan Gabriel and all the higher profile guys. So like he looks like he belongs with them, which is fine because that's probably more than you were expecting from a guy coming in at 668. But
Yeah.
I don't think any of them are good.
No.
Jalen Milroe is the one guy that I think you could talk me into in this class just because you are betting on an incredible athlete. And if you actually, here's the thing, it's like Tyler Shook and Jaxson Dart and Will Howard and all these guys, like they have big weaknesses and limited potential. Like, what's the best you could imagine Jaxson Dart being? Like, what is the best outcome for Jaxson Dart? And I'm just like, I don't know, like maybe Derek Carr, like maybe, like that
I can imagine. Yeah, that's probably fair.
yeah.
But I'll
like
be honest.
That's about where I can get to. Like with Milroe, the best you can imagine is like Lamar Jackson. Like so, at least like you have that there. Right. Yeah. Where like all the rest of these guys, you're like, maybe if everything works out right, they'll be an average starting quarterback. I'm like, what's the point? Mm-hmm. Just go find an average starting quarterback. There's lots of them out there. You don't need to draft a project to get there.
I absolutely do not think he's going to turn into this player, but like a lot of the things that Jaxson Dart's like cons are about his game, the deficiencies that we see at Ole Miss are like the same things that people talked about with Brock Purdy when he was in college. And I'm not saying he's going to turn into Brock Purdy, but like a guy that was late, RPO heavy offense. The biggest problem was getting him to play on time. Like, is he going to be that type of success?
That's another part of this too, is that there are like 5 teams that maybe should be interested in these guys because they do have the offensive system and coaching staff that it really, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but they should feel like it kind of doesn't matter who they have at quarterback. So yeah, the Rams should absolutely be drafting Jaxson Dart. The 49ers should absolutely be drafting Quinn Ewers. But like, teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers should not want any parts of these guys.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to pivot towards maybe the Steelers. Should they have interest in something else that could take place with or without them being a part of the transaction, but might as well talk about them in here because they need a wide receiver still. DK Metcalf reportedly being talked about. Could the Green Bay Packers swing a trade for him? What would that price look like? Being talked about from the Seattle side, and then also like Green Bay corroborating on the story as well. DK Metcalf talked about a receiver from there, whether it was Romeo Dobbs or Dontavian Wicks, maybe a first-round pick being involved with that as well. What do we make of that at that price? First off, I know you put the tweet up, but you can talk about it on here. What's the equivalent for the Steelers, and should they be involved at that price?
Yeah, I kind of put the tweet out there. Like, it's sort of kind of like 21 and Roman Wilson. I don't actually think the Seahawks would want Roman Wilson because they have Tyler Lockett and JSN, and both Wicks and Dobbs are bigger receivers. So, like, I don't think that's what Seattle would want, but I think that's, like, close to an approximation of the value that it would take. I don't know. I'm kind of interested in that idea. Like, you're probably not getting a player as good as DK Metcalf with pick 21. Probably. I just don't know if, like, that's like the question is how likely do they think they are of finding an upgraded wide receiver some other way? Like, what do they think their chances are of getting Chris Godwin or Devontae Adams, or trading for Christian Kirk, or trading for Deebo Samuel? Like, if they think those are relatively likely, then I don't think I would pursue this angle because of how expensive it is in terms of you're giving up a lot in that first round pick. And you're going to have to pay him too. Deebo's contract ends this year. He wants a new deal. So, like, you're going to have to pay him on top of the pick and the player. And so, like, that's a lot to pay. But if they don't think any of that is likely to happen, they have to address the position. Like, I don't know, desperation makes for bad moves. I can kind of see them being interested.
I think that they would be for sure too. Like, I'd be surprised. I know that, like, the information might not be out there, but I guarantee that they called last year to at least check in on the availability. Probably were shot down immediately, but now in a contract year, maybe not so much. And we'll see what direction things go. But if those talks are happening with Green Bay, they could certainly also be happening with Pittsburgh if they could make a call. But the other receiver that you mentioned, Deebo, within there as well, today put out there that Washington, Houston, very aggressive on the Deebo Samuel front. Jordan Schultz is the one that put that out there. And he also mentioned Pittsburgh within there as like a team that has checked in, but didn't say, they were as heavily interested. Those are the two teams to watch. That kind of leads me back to what you just said. Like, are they going to land, like, they're going to make a deal somewhere to improve this wide receiver room. Like, I know last year we talked about it. It might end up being a bad deal at the end of the day when all things considered, but, like, you got to find a way to improve this wide receiver room. It just seems like they keep striking out.
Yeah, the way the Deebo stuff has been reported has been very strange, where it's been like the 49ers might trade him. There may not be a trade market for him. The 49ers might cut him if there's no trade market. Now there's this trade. Like, I was talking to a 49ers reporter today who said, like, the most I can see them getting for him is a 5th round pick and not eating any money.
So like, how can there be teams categorized? Like, what is super aggressive for Deebo Samuel if it's
super aggressive means someone has offered 5th round pick and a ham sandwich, and someone else has just offered a 5th round pick, and the 49ers are strongly leaning towards the ham sandwich offer.
Yeah, I mean, I have been steadfast, and I don't think it's going to be much of a return for San Francisco if they're able to trade him. So when I saw that today, I was like, man, and again, this time of year, or any time of year, especially when a player's on the trade market, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Obviously, somebody has something to gain there, and they're going to make it seem like there's a ton of interest to obviously get teams to pay up. But is that what you would drop this in then? Like, this is probably coming from San Francisco's side, saying this is like trying to up the price.
Trying to drum up a bidding war. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, all right.
Maybe no one's even offering the 5th in the ham sandwich. Maybe right now they're staring at a bunch of 7ths and they're like, we got to do something here. I'm hungry.
Yeah. So Steelers, I would say, at least as that would be categorized, not necessarily the favorites.
They're interested. I don't know that they're the like. I think that's an interesting part. Forget the aggressiveness characterization. Mm-hmm. Clearly, there's a message there that the other two teams mentioned feel closer to making a deal than the Steelers do, and I think that's noteworthy.
Also, D'Amico Ryan's head coach in Houston, Adam Peters, the GM in Washington, have different ties. They've been in the building with Deebo Samuel, obviously, in the past. So maybe that's a part of it, too. So Steelers wouldn't be categorized as favorites there, but they are currently favorites for JK Dobbins, former Ravens running back who spent last year with the Chargers, obviously, was actually had a pretty nice year. I would say was on the short list for a lot of people in terms of comeback player of the year. What do we make of this? What do we make of this fit? We talked about Nick Chubb, obviously. This is another free agent back hitting the market.
I don't hate it. He's like, in fact, someone in the I said, like, we had talked about the idea of the Steelers signing a running back, and I said, like, just find like 80% of Najee Harris. And someone in the comments was like, 80% of Najee Harris isn't an NFL player. I'm like, no, 80% of Najee Harris is JK Dobbins. And so it was literally the example I used. Sure, it'd be fine. Like, if you can get him cheap, I don't know what the market is going to be like for him. I wouldn't overpay, but I would have interest in the player. And I think you put together a running back room of Dobbins and Warren and a rookie, that starts to look pretty good. And if you're not paying him a lot and the rookie turns out to be really good, then you don't feel bad about like, sorry, you're not getting very many carries. Like, oh, doesn't matter. Like you just as a cheap option, as a cheap running back too, I think it's a decent idea.
I'm just curious about the market because the year that he did have was able to stay healthy. I think that's the big part of it is you obviously know that he's got to be like part of a committee, right? Like him and Gus Edwards had a pretty good thing with the Chargers last year, and they have some other backs that are able to contribute here in Pittsburgh. Obviously, he'd be working with Jalen Warren, and then like you incorporate the draft too. I was going to ask, like, does that preclude them from taking one or like at least super early to you, like, or is day 2 still in play for a back if you get a JK Dobbins?
No, I don't think that would preclude them from doing anything as long as it's cheap. And I don't think they should do it if it's not.
Okay. Yeah. I have no clue what his, I wonder if he has does he have a estimated value or anything? I haven't seen it. If so, like on SpoTrack or whatever, how they do those.
I don't know, but like, I think the running back market is in such flux that I'd be pretty skeptical of like, those SpoTrack things are like using an algorithm based on what's happened in the past. And like, I'm not sure we can do that with the running back class right now.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay. Well,
he didn't make very much last year. It was a 1-year deal for 1.
I know. Yeah. I was like scrolling down here trying to find him in with the market.
Even if they want to give him a decent raise and you want to give him like 2 years, $5 million, I think I'm in on that. Like that works for me.
Just for the sake of putting it out there, it has it as 2 years, 8.1.
Okay. I don't know if I'm in on 2 years, 8.1, but yeah, I mean.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good stuff. Alan, you know the drill. Before we got here, tell people they can find you.
Saunders _PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Go there and read the words so I can get paid. Get a column up about cornerback just posted as we started to record this, so it's already out. And also broke down my thoughts on the quarterback position today as well. And then subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of Steelers Morning Rush, Steelers Afternoon Drive, all of the Combine interview videos, which are going to be dropping here over the weekend. I'll try to spread them out as best as I can. It's not like, unload on you all like 17 interviews, but I think Emeka Egbuka's up there right now. There'll be more coming here throughout today and tomorrow and Sunday.
There we go. Keep the subscribers coming. We are at 15,100 and Tyrone Carter subscribers right now.
I do like that number. I think we've had that one before.
Yeah, I'm sure when we were at the 023, probably used that. So hate to recycle, but like Joe Hayden, obviously.
I'll go way back here. Mike Wagner, Super Bowl.
There you go. That's a good one. If you're listening somewhere else, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe over there, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. You will find us. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing everywhere else. Got to start posting on TikTok again now that I'm back in there. Thank you for getting us back in the United States. And then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.